On August 12th of 2015 in the Tianjin port of northern China, an explosion occurred. This explosion killed 173 people and injured 798. There was a loss of $3 billion in damages, and people 2 kilometers away had their windows shattered. And when it rained, white chemical foam covered the streets and people felt agonizing pain and rashes on their skin. The water was poisoned and thousands of dead fish came to the shore 6 kilometers away. The port of Tianjin exports and imports materials via ships throughout the world, and amongst these shipments there are also hazardous and explosive chemicals. The company handling these chemicals violated many safety regulations. They packed huge volumes of different volatile chemicals together instead of storing them separately at safe distances and in smaller quantities as recommended in the industry. For example, they stored acids next to alkaloids and flammable materials next to explosive materials. These were obviously dangerous practices that endangered the lives of everyone. Now this is where the explosion occurs. A container of dry nitrocellulose lost its wetting agent due to damaged packaging. Nitrocellulose is shock sensitive and can ignite spontaneously and explode when exposed to heat, air, sunlight, and other materials. A fire started from the nitrocellulose, which spread to the 800 tons of ammonium nitrate, an explosive material. This exploded other chemical containers nearby, creating an explosion of different chemicals. Firefighters who came to the scene were unaware of the illegally stored chemicals and fought with water, an oxidizing agent, which further intensified the explosions. Aftermath. Firefighters, police, and first responders made up majority of the deaths. The explosion destroyed windows from buildings more than 2 kilometers away, and many of the wounded had glass or shrapnel cuts, skull injuries, or fractures. 49 Ruhai logistics staff and government officials were jailed, and $3 billion were lost in damages. The government implemented new legislation requiring companies storing dangerous chemicals to notify authorities about the dangers, and the water sample near the area held dangerous amounts of sodium cyanide, a toxic chemical. Cleanup. So what's the problem? There are around 700 tons of sodium cyanide before the explosion, and sodium cyanide is an extremely fatal and toxic chemical to human beings, fish, and other organisms. And the poisonous sodium cyanide had also caused dead fish to wash up on the shore. Also, the Tianjin port is connected to a major sea and a fast solution is needed. Otherwise, the sodium cyanide infested waters will spread to the Bohai Sea and affect more marine life, potentially affecting the fishing industry too. So what's the solution? Adding hydrogen peroxide to the lake will cause a reaction that neutralizes the sodium cyanide. This reduces the toxicity levels of the lake and makes a safer environment for aquatic life. The resulting salt is cyanuric acid, which further decomposes into ammonia and carbon dioxide. This was the solution the Chinese government implemented. Now, what's the effectiveness of this solution? So, hydrogen peroxide neutralizes the sodium cyanide and forms cyanuric acid. Cyanuric acid is much less lethal than sodium cyanide. This also reduces the levels of toxicity within the water, making the environment safer for fish. Ammonia is an extremely toxic chemical to marine life, and this chemical can penetrate through a fish's cell membrane, while ammonium cannot. Fortunately, ammonia and ammonium exist in equilibrium with each other, which is affected by the pH level of the water. For example, a higher pH increases the amount of ammonia and lowers the ammonium, and vice versa. If this ratio is imbalanced, it may harm the fish and aquatic life. Cons. Now, carbon dioxide is formed, and carbon dioxide in water increases the amount of hydrogen ions within the lake. This results in ocean acidification, which lowers the pH level of the ocean. This harms aquatic life by eating away the minerals used by oysters, clams, lobsters, shrimp, coral reefs, and other marine life to build their shells and skeletons. This is also labeled as osteoporosis of the ocean. This causes a disruption in the food web for marine life. Carbon dioxide in water is also harmful for fish in high concentrations because the carbon dioxide reduces the ability of a fish's blood to transport oxygen. This also changes the balance between ammonia and ammonium, resulting in higher levels of ammonia, a toxic chemical for fish. What are the implications? Economical implication. Warehouses and buildings that stored shipments and packages were destroyed, resulting in an economic loss for many companies and businesses. Fortune 500 companies were also impacted, causing a huge stock market loss. Other shipping ports/centers around China were temporarily shut down for safety inspections, thus temporarily slowing down the global supply chain, which resulted in delayed shipments to consumers. And items could not be exported through the port anymore, affecting international trade and causing corporations to transport items through other areas in China. This resulted in higher shipping and product prices. Political implications. The Tianjin port stopped accepting hazardous chemicals. Hazardous shipments were moved to the Qingdao port as it was further away from citizens. This also resulted in companies changing shipping routes. Firefighters were unaware and untrained with the chemicals present, resulting in new training practices and the use of foam instead of water when fighting chemically created fires. The Tianjin port had violated safety regulations, resulting in the creation of new legislation for the handling of toxic chemicals by the Chinese government. In summary, the Tianjin port explosion occurred on August 12th of 2015. 173 people were killed and 789 were injured. Dangerous chemicals were stored close to each other and a fire had occurred from one container, resulting in a domino effect of explosions. Sodium cyanide, a toxic chemical, leached onto the lake nearby. This was a major economic loss for many businesses, and this event introduced new government legislation and increased safety protocols. Hydrogen peroxide was used to neutralize the sodium cyanide that leaked onto the lake. Though the cleanup process lowered the toxicity levels of the lake, it caused ocean acidification and harmed marine life.